The American Advantage: Why the New Cold War is About Coordination. Section 1. Introduction: A New Kind of War. The geopolitical landscape is shifting. While conventional markers of conflict, military buildup, trade disputes, and territorial posturing remain present, the defining feature of global competition in the 21st century is increasingly subtle and systemic. Rather than focusing solely on ideology or armament, the emerging Cold War centers around coordination capacity, the ability of a nation to align its industries, technologies, infrastructure, and institutions toward strategic outcomes. This transition marks a departure from the conditions that shaped the original Cold War. The United States and Soviet rivalry was grounded in ideological confrontation and military deterrence. Today's rivalry between the United States and China is less about opposing worldviews and more about competing models of integration, execution, and influence, both domestically and globally. At the core of this dynamic lies a fundamental asymmetry. China's model is built on vertical integration and centralized command. It synchronizes state planning with industrial development, resource acquisition, and technology deployment. The United States, by contrast, has historically leaned on decentralized innovation, market competition, and distributed governance. This model has produced extraordinary dynamism, but also increasing difficulty in aligning national objectives with economic or technological execution. As this exposition will argue, the emerging geopolitical contest will not be determined solely by who controls more resources or builds more infrastructure. It will be determined by who can coordinate complexity at scale, not through control alone, but through adaptable, resilient systems. That distinction may define not only the outcome of this new Cold War, but the future architecture of global power. Section 2. Historical context: How we got here. China's strategic consolidation. Over the past 4 decades, China has transformed from a low-cost manufacturing base into a tightly coordinated economic and geopolitical system. This transformation did not happen organically. It was the result of deliberate state strategy, beginning with Deng Xiaoping's reforms in the late 1970s, which opened China to global capital while retaining centralized political control. Through successive policy initiatives, including Made in China 2025, the Belt and Road Initiative, and recent 5-year plans, the Chinese state has pursued a model of vertically integrated development. In this model, infrastructure, logistics, raw materials, manufacturing, finance, and technology are strategically interwoven. These components are not merely optimized for profit, but calibrated to serve long-term national objectives such as supply chain dominance, energy security, and technological self-sufficiency. This approach enables the Chinese system to move with a level of cohesion uncommon in liberal democracies. For example, when the government identifies a strategic technology, such as electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, or fifth-generation infrastructure, it can coordinate funding, land use, labor supply, academic research, and export policy to accelerate deployment across sectors. The resulting system is not purely market-driven. It is centrally synchronized, capable of large-scale adaptation with minimal internal friction. The advantages of this model have become especially evident in areas such as rare earth minerals, global port infrastructure, semiconductor packaging, and battery production. China's ability to coordinate across domains has allowed it to position itself as a central node in critical global supply chains. The American path: decentralization and dispersal. In contrast, the United States pursued a different trajectory. Following the Cold War, the dominant United States strategy emphasized globalization, deregulation, and the export of capital and production capacity. These trends were not coordinated by national policy, but emerged from private sector incentives, financial liberalization, and the belief in the self-regulating nature of markets. The outcome was a dispersed industrial base and an increasingly complex web of global dependencies. High-value manufacturing shifted offshore. Domestic supply chains atrophied. Meanwhile, innovation flourished in software, finance, and consumer technology, areas where capital and talent could operate without reliance on physical infrastructure or state alignment. This decentralization produced significant benefits: rapid technological breakthroughs, vibrant entrepreneurship, and deep capital markets. But it also introduced coordination gaps. While individual firms excelled, the system as a whole became less capable of mobilizing resources for national-scale objectives, whether in pandemic response, infrastructure renewal, or industrial policy. As global tensions rise and supply chain vulnerabilities become more visible, the United States now faces a structural challenge: how to realign its innovative capacity with national strategy without undermining the decentralized foundations that made it globally competitive. Section 3. The coordination gap. The strategic divergence between China and the United States is not solely about ideology or governance style. It is increasingly about the architecture of coordination. Each country has developed a distinct method for aligning internal systems and external influence. The tension between these models reveals not only their respective strengths, but also their limitations and the stakes of failing to adapt. China's model: command as coordination. China's approach to coordination relies on centralized command structures. The Chinese Communist Party acts as both policymaker and executive function across the economy, embedding political authority into corporate governance, infrastructure planning, research institutions, and international finance. This top-down model allows for rapid mobilization of resources and synchronized execution. Infrastructure megaprojects, strategic resource acquisition, and industrial policy can be initiated and scaled with minimal political resistance or interagency delay. For example, state-owned enterprises can be directed to operate below market profitability in order to serve geopolitical aims. Universities and tech firms are guided by government priorities, enabling alignment between education, research, and commercialization. Overseas investment vehicles, such as those funding Belt and Road projects, are backed by policy banks that extend credit in service of national strategy. This system is not without internal inefficiencies or risks, including misallocation of capital, limited transparency, and systemic overextension. However, it remains highly effective at orchestrating complex, long-term initiatives that span multiple domains of policy and production. In short, China has demonstrated that coordinated scale is achievable through centralized control, especially when supported by an integrated bureaucracy, consistent leadership vision, and the absence of electoral turnover. America's fragmentation: innovation without integration. By contrast, the United States excels in bottom-up innovation but struggles with top-down alignment. Technological breakthroughs frequently emerge from universities, startups, or private enterprises, often without reference to national policy goals or public infrastructure planning. This dynamic has fueled extraordinary technological and cultural influence, but it has also created a fragmented strategic landscape. Examples include federal and state governments often pursue conflicting policies on critical infrastructure, such as energy grids or transportation. Major tech firms operate independently of national security frameworks, with limited coordination on emerging risks in artificial intelligence, semiconductors, or social platforms. Talent, capital, and data are distributed across private networks that do not inherently prioritize public outcomes. The result is a system rich in innovation, but limited in systemic coherence. Public-private partnerships exist, but are often reactive, rather than proactive or strategic in design. Political cycles and regulatory fragmentation further reduce the ability to execute multi-decade national projects. This fragmentation is increasingly evident in areas where strategic cohesion is essential, including pandemic response, clean energy transition, semiconductor manufacturing, and global infrastructure finance. While the United States remains a hub of creativity and capital, it faces rising challenges in translating those assets into coordinated geopolitical advantage. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 4. The American Advantage: Decentralized Orchestration. Despite its coordination challenges, the United States possesses a unique and potentially decisive strength: the ability to scale systems not through centralized control, but through decentralized orchestration. This strength lies not in mimicking China's model, but in leveraging the American ecosystem's inherent capacity for modular, adaptive coordination, powered by open technologies, market incentives, cultural influence, and institutional pluralism. Innovation at the edge. The United States economy functions as a network of loosely coupled, highly dynamic actors. Universities, venture capital firms, startups, research labs, and multinational corporations all operate semi-independently, yet are connected through a shared infrastructure of laws, markets, and norms. This structure allows for high degrees of experimentation and rapid feedback loops. In fields such as software engineering, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and digital finance, American firms and researchers often lead not by mandate, but by outpacing competitors through distributed innovation. This is evident in the global dominance of United States-based internet platforms and cloud infrastructure providers, the venture capital ecosystem's role in continuously funding emerging technologies and business models, the development of open-source communities that enable innovation to spread rapidly without central planning. These capacities are not coordinated through a unified strategy, but they enable emergent order, forms of spontaneous coordination that arise from incentive alignment, cultural norms, and interoperable technical standards. Protocols as a new layer of coordination. One of the most promising developments in the American innovation landscape is the rise of protocol-based coordination, particularly in areas such as blockchain, distributed computing, and programmable finance. These technologies allow for trustless, scalable systems where alignment does not require centralized enforcement. Examples include blockchain networks that enable decentralized consensus across global participants, smart contracts that encode rules and agreements into executable software, token-based systems that create incentive structures for cooperation across previously disconnected actors. These tools offer a non-coercive method of coordination, enabling systems that are transparent and auditable by design, resilient to single points of failure, capable of integrating diverse stakeholders without hierarchy. While these technologies remain nascent, their strategic implications are profound. They suggest a future in which coordination does not require consolidation of control, but instead relies on standardization, interoperability, and programmable alignment mechanisms. In geopolitical terms, this is not merely a technical evolution. It is a new mode of system building, one that allows for pluralistic, bottom-up coordination at global scale. It is this architectural shift that represents the American advantage in the current strategic environment. Section 5, Coordination without command, the blueprint forward. If the defining feature of China's model is command-enabled coordination, the United States must explore how to achieve coordination without command, a model that retains the advantages of decentralization while mitigating its fragmentation. This does not require abandoning market-based systems or emulating centralized planning. Instead, it demands the development of new institutional frameworks, incentive structures, and digital infrastructure that can align diverse actors towards shared outcomes. Aligning public and private interests. A foundational challenge for the United States is translating private sector dynamism into strategic national outcomes. This requires more than traditional public-private partnerships. It calls for institutional mechanisms that enable modular coordination without sacrificing autonomy. Key directions may include mission-driven industrial policy, identifying national priorities, such as semiconductor resilience or renewable energy deployment, and establishing incentive frameworks that reward participation without mandating it. Outcome-based funding models, structuring public investment in ways that fund results rather than predefined methods, allowing for innovation within clear strategic parameters. Regulatory sandboxes, creating flexible environments for experimentation with emerging technologies, particularly in critical sectors like digital identity, financial infrastructure, and artificial intelligence governance. These approaches aim to create coherence through incentives, not directives, enabling the United States system to maintain its openness while becoming more strategically aligned. Protocol infrastructure as strategic asset. As digital systems become core to economic and geopolitical power, the development and governance of protocol infrastructure will play a critical role. Unlike traditional infrastructure, protocols are designed to be globally interoperable, resistant to censorship or centralized control, scalable across jurisdictions and institutions. Emerging examples of protocol infrastructure relevant to United States strategy include Open financial networks, such as stablecoin-based payment rails and decentralized settlement layers. Digital identity standards, such as verifiable credentials and proof of personhood systems. Data coordination protocols, such as zero-knowledge proofs and decentralized oracles. Such systems can support both domestic coordination and international trust, allowing allies, firms, and citizens to interoperate without needing to adopt a centralized platform or align under a single authority. This is particularly important in a world where interoperability and sovereignty increasingly collide. Protocols offer a middle path, enabling integration without domination. Use case: monetary systems and decentralized finance coordination. One concrete domain for protocol-based coordination is the evolution of monetary systems. In response to both inflationary pressures and geopolitical fragmentation, new forms of asset-backed digital currencies are emerging. These systems aim to combine stability through hard asset backing such as gold or Bitcoin, liquidity through tokenization and smart contract-based exchanges, access and programmability through decentralized finance platforms. An example is the GoldBits protocol, which integrates tokenized gold, Bitcoin, and dollar-pegged stablecoins into a tri-asset monetary unit designed for resilience, yield, and interoperability. This architecture offers an alternative to both fiat dependence and centralized central bank digital currency models, reflecting the American advantage of building opt-in systems with aligned incentives. Such experiments illustrate a broader principle. Digital coordination systems can now serve as infrastructure, not just speculative assets. The United States is uniquely positioned to lead in this space, not through state monopoly, but through innovation in open standardized protocols. Section 6, Implications. The new global game board. The transition from command-based to protocol-based coordination is not only a domestic strategy for the United States, it is also reshaping the global landscape. As systems of trade, finance, technology, and governance become increasingly digital, the dominant powers of the 21st century will be defined not just by what they control, but by how their systems integrate with others. The competition is no longer only about dominance. It is about interoperability, credibility, and systemic reach. Winners and losers in a modular world. The emerging architecture of power favors states that can coordinate across borders, sectors, and institutions without requiring full alignment under a single authority. This is a fundamental departure from the traditional imperial model, which relied on control of territory, extractive relationships, and top-down enforcement. In this new environment, nations that can build credible, modular systems, whether in finance, identity, or data, will become hubs of coordination, attracting users, partners, and capital. Polities that demand conformity to rigid standards may struggle to scale influence beyond their immediate sphere, especially as trust in centralized systems declines. Small and mid-sized states may gain leverage by selectively integrating into open systems, increasing optionality without surrendering sovereignty. This rebalancing offers the United States an opportunity. By focusing on designing coordination platforms rather than asserting control, it can regain influence as a convener of trust and a builder of global infrastructure, roles more sustainable and adaptive than traditional hegemony. Economic and strategic realignments. This shift has practical consequences across multiple domains. Number 1, finance. As decentralized monetary systems and digital asset protocols mature, reliance on traditional reserve currencies and centralized clearing systems, such as SWIFT, may decline. United States-backed or United States-enabled protocol finance systems could offer alternatives to both dollar exclusion and centralized digital currency authoritarianism, preserving influence through accessibility rather than enforcement. Number 2, supply chains. Rather than attempting to recreate vertically integrated domestic manufacturing on China's scale, the United States can develop protocol-based supply chain visibility, compliance, and trade finance systems. These tools would allow trusted networks of suppliers, regulators, and financiers to collaborate securely across jurisdictions. Number 3, alliances. Just as the post-World War II United States system offered a rules-based international order through institutions like the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund, the next phase of United States strategy may involve protocol-level governance standards, shared rules for digital conduct, verified identity, and programmable trade that align democratic allies without requiring full harmonization of law or policy. From geopolitics to system design. Ultimately, the power to shape the global order may no longer lie in conventional geopolitics alone, but in system design, the ability to create platforms, standards, and networks that others voluntarily adopt because they are more open, secure, or useful than the alternatives. This is where the American advantage becomes most relevant, by building coordination systems that others want to plug into, not because they must, but because they benefit. The United States can reassert its influence without imposing its will. This represents not just a strategy, but a philosophical shift, from control to compatibility, from dominance to design. Section 7, Conclusion, Change the Race. The global contest between the United States and China is not a replay of the Cold War. It is a structural transformation of how power operates in a connected, digital, and interdependent world. At the heart of this transformation lies a fundamental question. How can nations coordinate complexity at scale in ways that are both resilient and adaptive? China's model, built on centralized command, vertical integration, and policy-driven execution, has demonstrated extraordinary capacity to mobilize national resources in pursuit of strategic objectives. Its strength lies in its cohesion, but its rigidity may become a liability in a world that demands flexibility, trust, and system interoperability across diverse stakeholders. The United States, by contrast, has long thrived on decentralized innovation, market fluidity, and open exchange. These traits remain core advantages, but they must now be restructured into systems that can coordinate without command, systems that align capital, talent, and technology not just for private gain, but for shared strategic outcomes. This is not a call to emulate China. It is a recognition that the race has changed, and that the United States must define the rules of engagement around its own comparative strengths, building open, incentive-aligned systems that others choose to join, designing protocols and standards that operate across borders and institutions, orchestrating complexity without collapsing it into control. In this new Cold War, one centered not on ideology or territory, but on coordination infrastructure, the winner will not be the nation that centralizes the most power, but the one that builds the most trusted, adaptable, and integrative systems. The American advantage lies in its ability to construct such systems. But that advantage is not automatic. It must be recognized, cultivated, and deliberately scaled. The future of power will be built, not by force, but by those who can coordinate the willing at global scale.